Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Annalisa and this is going to be my September wrap up. I'm filming in two separate parts that will go into the same video because some books need to go back to the library, so I want to talk about them before then. I also wanted to tell you guys about this skirt I made. I made myself a full-size version. I had scrap fabric and I got this Barbie because she's a wheelchair user, but she had a very uninspiring outfit that is just this as a tube dress. So I made her a miniature version and I put a little tiny elastic in her little skirt and she looks so cute, but the elastic bit was very difficult, so I'm really proud of it. So first of all, the month started off with the middle grade magic readathon. I will link an announcement video which will have all the hosts and everything below, but this is a readathon that celebrates middle grade, and middle grade is my favorite age range, so I decided to take part in it and read a bunch of the middle grade that I had been putting off reading because of like other readathons and like various other reasons I wanted to get to other books first. So I really enjoyed my time. First I read Baraka Beats by Malia Siddiqui, and this is about a young Muslim hijabi girl who transfers from Muslim school to public school when she's 11 or 12, and it's a big transition. It's very different. She had a very small class size before and she was with other Muslims, and in this case she does manage to find some Muslim friends at school. All four of these on the cover are her Muslim friends, but her best friend is not a Muslim, and it feels weird to have the push between her best friend's other friends and her, and she experiences some Islamophobia and racism, but she finds these other Muslims and they run a band, and her family believes that Muslims should not make music. It's their interpretation of some teachings from the Quran, and Muslims have different views on this, so some of them make music and some of them do not, and so she wants to befriend these other Muslims, so she has people who have things in common with her, and also to look cool because everybody likes this band, but she struggles with not being able to tell her parents that she is going to make music with them because it's against their beliefs, and how will they react if she has different beliefs than them. And so throughout the book she kind of goes back and forth on thinking about how she feels about making music herself versus other people, and there's a lot of discussion of her faith and how people who have the same faith can have different subsets of beliefs within it. And my favorite relationship is between her and this girl who is the sister of one of the band members. They are really sweet together, and it's a very interesting book and explored something that I didn't really know about. I didn't know about the some Muslims believing in not making music thing. And that was for the prompt, a main character who is different from you. So the next book I read was for a book with a main character who is similar to you. So I picked Ellen Outside the Lines by A.J. Sass, and this was an opportunity to read this, which I had been putting off reading this for a long time because I was nervous that there would be meltdowns of the autistic person in this book, and those are really stressful to read, but there weren't any. There were times when she got overwhelmed and times when she was sad and things like that, but no actual meltdowns, which are very stressful for me to read about. So it is about Ellen going with her class on a trip to Barcelona with her Spanish class and exploring Barcelona, and she gets put with a team of people who are people she doesn't really know at all, but she does at least have her dad as the, when you are courting someone you have a elderly, they make sure you don't get in trouble, they're adults, and her dad is with her team, so she struggles with not being with her best friend who's in this class. Being with new people and making new friendships is really a struggle, and then having an irregular schedule and that's different from her usual is a struggle, especially when she didn't know until the beginning of the trip what the schedule would be. and she's in a strange place, so there's lots of stressors. But when she gets overwhelmed, her new friends are actually really good at helping her find somewhere quiet where she can calm down and become less overstimulated. And her dad, of course, is also helpful with that, so I really appreciate that. Also, Ellen and her dad and her mom are Jewish, and there's some discussion of that, about how they practice in different ways, and sometimes like eating kosher is important, and they have different practices about Shabbat, and so that was really interesting. And this is also a queer book, so our main character likes girls, and it gets put in a team with a non-binary person, and there's another gay person on her team, so lots of queerness going around, and that's really nice to see in a middle grade. And it talks a little about pronouns in a like really easy for kids to understand way that I appreciated, but it also like talked about more difficult topics, like how important it is not to out other people and things like that. So I really enjoyed this. The autism rep was really good. It is own voices. I really like this one. 5 stars. Then for a book that breaks the rules of the genre, I picked a queer book, which is The Insiders by Mark Oshiro, and this is about 3 queer characters, a non-binary person, a gay boy, and a girl who likes girls. Those are the 3 on the cover, and it is about a room that appears when children need it, especially children who are outcast for some reason, which in this case is because of their gender and sexualities. And it gives them whatever they need. It gives them a safe place. It gives them food and water if they missed breakfast that morning. It gives them a library in one case, because one of the kids' library is being gotten rid of at the school. So it's a very cool magic system type of a thing that you don't like ever totally get to understand, but the kids explore it to a certain extent. And it's a really fun idea. There is a lot of bullying in this book, so like be careful with this. This was kind of painful to read. So I really love this, but it was also very difficult to read. So 4.5 stars. Then for Animal Companion, I picked Willowdene, which has a couple of animals on the cover. This is such a cool book. It has a autistic coded main character, which I didn't know before I started reading it. I just thought it was cute and had cool animals, but very much autistic coded main character, with a lot of the really key traits that like set it apart from other types of neurodivergence. This is about a girl who loves these boar-like animals that stink, and no one in the town likes them, and they are worried that they will get rid of tourists, so they start hunting them. And the tourists come for the little honey bears, which are those little bear things on the cover, but as the boars, I don't remember what they're called, start disappearing, the hummingbirds stop coming around. And so our main character cares about the boars, whether or not they affect the hummingbirds, but as she investigates, she starts to figure out that maybe there really is a connection, and a lot of the book is her figuring out that connection and making friends with someone who isn't really an outcast, but he decides to just be her friend anyway, and that was really sweet. And he makes little critters, he weaves them out of like reeds and stuff, and something magical happens with one of the creatures that he weaves. It's really cool. I really liked this really simple and age-appropriate look at environmentalism and how you can't mess with nature without and like try to get rid of one thing that you don't like without it affecting the things that you do like or that are beneficial, that you see as beneficial. And messing with nature can have unforeseen consequences. I really liked how it explored that. It was so interesting. It was very clear without being preachy. Plus it's a really sweet story about an autistic coded person saving the world with their hyper empathy for creatures that other people don't care about, which is really precious. So 5 stars to Willadine. Then I read, for no particular prompt, The Deepest Breath, which is another of the queer books recommended by Anya. And it is told in verse, and it's like 180 pages, so it's really quick. And it's a really sweet story about a girl figuring out that she has a crush on her best friend, who's also a girl, and dealing with anxiety and having a single mom. And it's quite melancholy for a lot of it, but also very sweet. And part of it is about how having queer books in the library, particularly for middle grade readers, is really important. So that was really cool, and I gave it 5 stars. On to future me.
Okay, so it's now the end of September, and I was very busy this month and like kind of stressed about stuff, so I pretty much read whatever was very enthralling and like didn't take a lot of, that was my cat nudging the tripod, didn't take a lot of like concentration and like effort to read. So I continued on what I had been doing some in August and read a whole bunch of monster romances. So that's gonna be the whole rest of this video. I'll be fairly brief, but let's get started. First of all, Girls Weekend by C.M. Nascosta. This is a novella about 3 elf women who live in a world quite a bit like, it's kind of set in modern day, but where magic is part of everyday life, and everybody knows about all these different species of magical creatures like orcs and elves and fairies and probably lots of other things. And there is a nudist colony full of orcs, and these 3 elves decide to go on a girls' weekend to the nudist colony because they have had trouble getting dates lately. They're going to try to have some fun with the locals there. And even though the girls were going looking for one-night stands, they end up finding some very sweet orcs and having some very sweet relationships, and I really enjoyed that. Since it was so short and divided into 3 perspectives, we didn't get very much of a story with each character, but I felt like each story was nicely contained and felt like it was the right length for that amount of story and like got across what it was wanting to say very efficiently. Then 2 by Regine Abel in part of a series. One is I Married a Dragon. That's the one I read first, and the cover kind of hideous, but I didn't imagine the dragon actually looking like that. That's not exactly how he's described. And this one is about an arranged marriage type of a thing between a dragon shapeshifter who's an alien, this one's sci-fi as opposed to fantasy, who needs a specific person to cuddle him in order to get rid of the toxins that get into his body when he fights. And so he accidentally stumbles upon this perfect person for him that helps him get rid of toxins while he's on a mission fighting bad guys, and she agrees to come to his world and be his cuddle buddy. And from being his cuddle buddy, they grow into having a romantic relationship, and I really like that idea. They were both very sweet characters, and the emotional connection came before the physical attraction, which is how I like it to be. Then I Married a Merman, which is earlier in the series, but I read them out of order, just whichever one I felt like picking up. And this one is about a woman who has to go to a different world because her DNA is changing, and it's making it hard for her to breathe on Earth, and so she goes to this other planet that has the right air for her, and as part of like getting citizenship on that planet, she has an arranged marriage with this guy, and he wants an arranged marriage because there are very few women on his planet. They don't have women babies very often, and she is compatible with him because of her changing DNA, and for them the attraction is immediate, but also just wanting to help each other out of a difficult situation. So they are very sweet together as well. And in both of these stories, I liked the world building and how each world was very different. For some reason, I've been having trouble talking lately. Like my tongue doesn't want to maneuver correctly. I don't know if there's something wrong with me. But yeah, if I kind of slur my words, that's what's happening. Frodo is also asking for attention, so I'm petting him below the camera. Then I found a whole series called the Orcsworn Series that is about romances with orcs, and this one is set in a fantasy world where the orcs and the humans have been at war, but recently there's been a treaty. At least at the time that I started at like the 4th book in the series, maybe the 5th book in the series, because it was called The Midwife and the Orc, and I really love midwives, so I thought that would probably be a good entry point to the series, and that I would probably like that one even if I didn't like the other ones. And I did really like the midwife aspect of that, and how part of the story was the main character becoming a midwife for the orcs and helping them have healthier births and good prenatal care. That's like a value of mine. And the sex scenes in all of these books that I read are quite gross. Not going to talk in detail about any of that, but they weren't to my taste. But I like the story so much, and the relationships and the angsty dynamics. They're all quite angsty. A lot of push-pull between humans and orcs, and misunderstandings of cultural misunderstandings, which I really like, examining cultural misunderstandings. And like, I feel like that's the best version of the miscommunication trope, when it actually makes sense that you would not understand each other because you're coming from vastly different perspectives. So I really like the examining of that, and so I continued in the series and kind of just picked and chose and jumped around which ones I wanted. So now I've read all of them that are out now except for the first one, so I read 5 books. And my favorite is definitely The Heiress and the Orc. And this one is about a woman who was childhood friends with an orc who she met in the forest, and they kept secretly meeting in the forest for a lot of their childhood until they were teenagers. And then he shows back up in her life when she's about to marry a lord or something. So it's a friendship to lovers situation, which is one of my favorite things. And it was so sweet, it actually made me cry at the end, so I like that a lot. So if you like people coming from different worlds and different cultures, and forming feelings for each other, and then having a lot of angst around those feelings because there's misunderstandings, and you also like fantasy romance and like fantasy world building. This doesn't have much magic world building, but it has a lot of orc society world building that I really enjoyed. These might be books for you. I personally skipped most of the sex scenes, but other people might enjoy them. So that's what I read during the rest of the month. Big change from the beginning of the month. But I am also trying to use my KU subscription before it expires, like in the middle of October. So I think I'm going to read a few things by Adriana Herrera that are on there for Latinx Heritage Month as well. There are a few more books that I might be getting from the library for that in the next couple of weeks. And then I might be taking part in Black Halloween this year. I don't like horror, but I think you can read like thrillers as part of this, and I sometimes enjoy thrillers, so I might be trying out some of those. So thank you so much for watching. I'd love to know how your month went, what your reading plans for next month might be, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!